As for things, not think. As for things, the things about which Georges Perec writes, for example, a novel entitled Things. And such that they now form the system of objects that made Jean Baudrillard famous in the world, they still constitute, until the beginning of the 20th century, the shared milieu within which relations of faithfulness are formed. These things tied together still and supported such relations as objects of inheritance, work, the formation of knowledge, shared activities, games, commerce of all kinds, etc., but also and above all as transitional objects, those of the infants as well as those of sublimation. Now the thingly supports of everyday life, which supported the world and the making world essentially grounded in and through this making trust, have become disposal and structural obsolescence as capitalism concretized what Schumpeter theorized in his theory of economic evolution, namely the chronic obsolescence of industrial products, henceforth furnished and swept away by a permanent innovation leading to an ineluctably self-destructive short-termism. Today, it has become an utter commonplace to see objects disappear into garbage disposals and garage sales faster than they appear on the market. Generalized disposability, which has today been imposed throughout the world and which affects human beings and firms and businesses as much as the objects they produce, along with the ideas and concepts these objects incarnate and disincarnate, has installed a systemic unfaithfulness and infidelity orchestrated through marketing and through which intergenerational relations are inverted. Children now dictate to parents how to behave, that is, what to buy. More generally, it is the entire apparatus for the production of libidinal energy, that is, for the rerouting and transformation of drive-based ends, which are structurally short-term, into social investments crystallized in the form of primary and secondary identifications, for speaking with Freud, which presuppose idealizations and thus proteiniform infinitizations. It is this entire apparatus for the sublimatory production of libidinal energy that is short-circuited and destroyed, and along with it, desire and its objects, if not the thing itself. Although that societies have always been grounded in the constitution and reign of faithfulness and trust, the roots of the fiduciary dimension of monetary economy, over the past century, and perhaps since the death of God, our society rests on the development of unfaithfulness and infidelity. The systematic organization of consumption presupposes the abandonment of objects, institutions, relations, places, and everything that can be controlled by a market, and which must therefore be abandoned by the symbolic dimension. This is a reign of adaptation, as Lyotard emphasized in the postmodern condition. That is, of flexible becoming, or even following the expression of Zygmunt Bauman, a matter of becoming liquid. The motto of liberalism has become the liquidation of all relations of dependence created by the organization of faithfulness. Moreover, these relations of dependence founded on fidelity are replaced by an organization of dependence grounded in infidelity. In this case, in a pharmacological dependence on experience. All objects becoming such experience, that is, substitutes for a lack that is not that of the desiring subject, but rather of the addict subjects, made dependent by their toxicomania. Probably you know the perfume of Dior, which is named Addict, and in Paris you have 50 shops entitled Addict. This results in the addiction of the consumer without object, being without object to which he can attach himself, given that the object belongs to a subject, insofar as it supports a relation of attachment, for speaking, for example, with Bauer. He must endure the horrible ordeal of the emptiness and futility of the self. Question extremely deeply explored by Mark Taylor. That is, of what is called by Winnicott the loss of the feeling of existing. This Winnicott's expression for psychic suffering par excellence being also the expression used by Richard Dern, a murderer, in his personal diary to describe his mental state 3 weeks before the massacre he committed in Nanterre near Paris on March 26, 2002, 1 month before the second tour of presidential votation in France, where Jean-Marie Le Pen, the extreme right candidate, were the second candidate in France. I must here make 3 comments. First, the self as such, the self, such as Winnicott tries to think it, and which stems, in my view, from what Simondon conceptualizes as psychic and collective individuation, is not reducible to the metaphysical self of consciousness. It is rather the self of the id, that is also of the unconscious. This is what must here be thought, and if there were time, this would necessarily pass by Betson's theory of alcoholism, but I have not asked for that. Second, the systemic destruction of faithfulness, necessarily induced by permanent innovation necessary to the consumerist economic system, is inevitably also the systemic destruction of trust. Now, no economic system can function without a basis in a priori trust. It is a function of the fiduciary hypomnematon to stabilize this trust, but it can't be produced by the system itself. Third, such a basis is necessarily constituted by something incalculable, which is an improbability and an infinity, which was given before his death the name of God, and which in the same stroke, when the nihilistic destiny of rationalization began to impose itself, saw the emergence of the thing. Freud comes after the death of God. In the Fall of Epimetheus, I attempted to